Welcome to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm Jeff Cranston. On this week's edition, I talked with Joann Muller, who is the Detroit-based transportation correspondent for Axios. Joann is a frequent guest on the podcast and always has a lot of interesting things to say. All things mobility, that's her beat. She has more than 40 years of experience covering the transportation industry and lives in the Detroit area. We cover everything from General Motors' announcement this week that they'll invest $4 billion to move some production back to U.S. factories from Mexico, slowing electric vehicle sales, the belief that drones will soon be everywhere, if they're not already, and U.S. efforts to break China's hold on rare earth magnets. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. So, Joann Muller, thank you for making a return visit to the podcast. I always enjoy talking to you about all things mobility and your beat, which, boy, it's just busier than ever, isn't it?
It sure is. It's nice to be here, Jeff. Thanks.
Yeah. So there's so much going on right now. And I look at your stories in your newsletter, and I don't know how you keep up with it all, but I wanted today to really talk about some of the freshest news, which is the General Motors announcement to invest $4 billion in the U.S. And move some of that production back from Mexico. Can you talk about that a little bit and the significance?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, we'll probably see even more of this from automakers, but I think, President Trump will definitely tout this as a win for his tariff policies. He wants to see more production in the U.S. and he's getting it from General Motors. What I think is interesting from GM's standpoint, right, is they do make a lot of, currently they make a lot of trucks and some crossovers in Mexico. They are moving some of that to the U.S. And importantly, this plant outside Detroit, Orion Township plant, was supposed to be making electric pickups, and they have basically scrapped that plan entirely. So what it means is they're going to make more gasoline products in the U.S. because that is what the consumer's buying. They also happen to be very profitable. There's great margins on the trucks and SUVs that are coming to this back to the United States. So that's like the Equinox and the Silverado and Sierra pickup trucks. So these are vehicles that they make good money on and that are in high demand. And so if you have to move stuff away from Mexico, you might as well make the stuff you can sell and make a good profit on. So it's a very logical decision, I think, for GM under these circumstances.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you know how much retooling is involved in that if they had already planned to go the EV route there?
Yeah. So if you'll recall, there was some years ago, they said they were going to invest $4 billion to turn that into an EV plant. Now they say they're going to spend $4 billion to turn it back into a gasoline plant. I was told by someone at GM that there's a lot of tooling that can be just reused, repurposed. And in fact, I think the strategy that you're going to be seeing at GM here and at other plants across the country is a flexible setup that can do either gas or EVs, because they're still all in on EVs. But until the consumer wants to buy a lot of them, they're just going to keep riding the gasoline trucks for the time being. But they can feather that up and down as needed. And so it's smart to be able to be flexible. And I don't think they're going to lose their shirt on this flip-flop is the answer to your question.
Well, and you touched on that EV component in your story a couple of days ago, but it isn't a new trend. I mean, this didn't happen with the change in administrations. You've been noting in your reporting for quite some time that either for range anxiety, fear of not being able to charge, or other reasons that maybe we can't even completely diagnose, EV sales just haven't taken off at the pace that automakers had hoped they would, right?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is let's acknowledge that EV sales are growing faster than other segments in the market. So they are growing and faster than some other gasoline models, but not as fast as was projected in order to get to, sort of a entirely electric fleet by 2035. That trajectory is just not happening. And that has been true for two big reasons. You mentioned one of them, which is charging. The charging infrastructure is not yet there sufficiently for people to feel good about it. But the other thing is the price. These EVs are still over $50,000 on average. Partly that's because many EVs are luxury cars, so they're just compete in a different segment. But the batteries are expensive. The technology's still, it hasn't been, you can't get the economies of scale yet on EVs. It's coming. It's coming, but
You're
it's not
right,
there
though.
yet.
That is the second reason I think I hear from people that tell me that they'd like to buy an EV. First, they're worried about charging, but second, they just cost a lot. So, yeah. Well, because I kind of thought that your stories this week made me think of a title for this whole thing, which is EVs, magnets, and drones. Oh my! Talk a little bit about your reporting on what's going on with the deal reached between the U.S. and China on these rare earth magnets. And I know that the term rare earth is really deceiving because it's not necessarily rare, but that's just a scientific term that's been used for years. But talk about why that's important.
So there's certain elements at the bottom of the table,
that thing that was on our wall
in our science class.
Classes. Yeah.
Periodic table of the elements. Yeah. That's it. I was having a blank there for a minute. Yeah. Anyways, some of these materials are essential to making really powerful magnets. The magnets are the things that run all the motors in everything that we have, anything electronic, whether it's a car or, a weapon, a missile or a windmill or anything. So these things, especially as we get more, our society becomes more high tech, they're very much in demand. Unfortunately, China makes 90% of the rare earth magnets in the world. And so they have everyone over a barrel. And so as the trade dispute between the US and China has gotten worse, naturally, China has pulled that lever and said, well, then we're going to slow down the licensing that we have for export of these magnets to US companies. They did it to Europe too, but we're focused on the US here. And that's, frankly, that's the reason why President Trump said, well, then we're not going to take any more Chinese students at our universities. We're not going to have any more visas for Chinese students. And that got China's attention. And so the two sides met for 2 days this week in London, and they finally announced a deal yesterday that the circumstances of it are still coming to light. It's sort of a framework of a deal, a concept of a plan, as Trump was famously quoted as saying in a debate during the campaign. But the point is, they've sort of said, okay, you can have magnets, and we'll take your students. It seems like it's a short-term deal, though, so it might be just kicking the can down the road on this issue, which is why I wrote about what the U.S. is doing to find long-term alternatives. And, when I say long-term, I mean long-term, because mines can't open overnight. It takes 7 to 9 years to open a mine. And so what we're doing, one interesting deal, there's a company in California that does have a rare earths mine. They don't make magnets yet. They're starting to ramp up. They have a new factory in Texas. And interestingly, that GM has already moved in and locked up the offtake of those magnets, at least for the first wave of production. But this company, it's called MP Materials, is going to become very important strategically to the U.S. And they have just struck a deal with a Saudi company. So Saudi Arabia also has some minerals that we can use. And the U.S. is getting closer to Saudi Arabia as we get farther from China. And so this is a new partnership that could yield some long-term solutions, but it will take years.
Yeah, and I think that it's good that your reporting was delving into not just how do we keep fighting with the Chinese about this, but what do we do long term? And I told you that I've heard people talk about this in terms of a strategic reserve, just like we have a strategic oil reserve. We need a strategic rare earth materials reserve, and that's what the U.S. should be focusing on.
It really should. And I think, this is one of the problems you see with the U.S. We're very innovative. We invent things all the time, and then we don't commercialize them very well. We don't have a long-term plan. Many countries have industrial policies, and the U.S. really doesn't. Politically, we swing from one side to the other, and there's no continuity. Right now, I think President Biden had tried to lay the groundwork for a strategic plan or some industrial policy around climate, right? And so that's why he put in all these EV incentives and EV manufacturing tax credits. It was a lot of stuff. You can debate whether or not that's where we should be going toward EVs. I know a lot of people would disagree over that, but it was the first time I had ever seen sort of a cohesive strategy. It's trying to stimulate both demand and supply. Now President Trump is ripping all that out, or the Congress, the Republican controlled Congress doesn't want to pursue that anymore. But what you have then is an interruption in what was beginning to be an industrial policy. So will Trump put in a different kind of industrial policy now? Maybe, but in 4 years, could it be ripped up again? There's no long-term thinking in the U.S.
Yeah, and that crosses administrations for sure.
Yeah.
Stick around. There's more to come right after this short message.
If you are enjoying today's Talking Michigan Transportation podcast and would like to learn more about some of the exciting innovations going on at the Michigan Department of Transportation, check out the MDOT YouTube channel for videos featuring project updates, safety initiatives, and program highlights. Go to youtube.com/MichiganDOT and subscribe.
What's your crystal ball tell you about this? You can't separate the politics, I know, but if there is critical mass and inertia toward becoming an electric vehicle mostly nation at some point, when would that happen?
You mean when would we become an EV nation?
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's interesting. I talked to an analyst, a very well-respected auto analyst last week, John Murphy from Bank of America, and he said he thinks we've peaked at 8% EVs. And I think that's wrong. I just don't think that's true. I think the U.S. is clearly lagging the rest of the world, but if the rest of the world is going electric, we really do need to do that as well. So I think we're just going to be very deliberate. America, we'll get there eventually, but I think we're going to take our time. We're going to have a lot more hybrids, plug-in hybrids. We see that in the sales numbers now. It's not that people are opposed to EVs. They're just, some of them have never driven one, so they don't know, it really is a superior ride and experience. But there are a lot of reasons that it's not convenient to drive an EV right now. And so I think people are taking their time, and I think we'll get there. I bet, when, I don't know, but I think by 2035, we're not going to be all EV, but I think we could definitely be half EV by 2035.
Interesting. So, yeah, it sounds like your basic philosophy about this is kind of that Churchill quote that America will do the right thing after it's exhausted all other possibilities.
Yes. Yes, I think so. We'll get there. But you have to always remember, too, that this is a global industry, and GM, Ford, Stellantis compete not just in the U.S., but in other parts of the world. So if they want to play in other parts of the world, they have to develop the technology that's, that is the rest of the world wants. And so the EV momentum is not going away. It's just the U.S. consumer doesn't have the motivation to buy one yet. And if we take away some of these tax incentives, they'll have even fewer incentives. On the good side, there are more and more affordable EVs in the $35,000 range that are coming out. And, there's some good cars out there. And
yeah, and the range is getting better too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think you covered that pretty well. So let's talk a little bit about your most recent reporting on drones. And I think the headline was drones will soon be everywhere. And my question is, aren't they already?
No, not yet. Not yet. In fact, if you're talking about drone delivery, drone inspections, drones in agriculture, these things are just beginning right now. And the biggest reason is that the regulations have prohibited drones from flying by themselves long distance, right? So the idea that the industry was trying to get to is one pilot sitting in a room with a computer screen, and he's monitoring 10, 20, 30 different drones at one time. Right now, it's limited to one guy with one drone, and he has to keep an eye on it the whole time. And that's required under the regulations. And so that's sort of impractical and holds back the adoption of drones. And so, it's impossible to scale it at that level because you're paying a whole bunch of humans to monitor one drone each, that is. So the rules are changing. President Trump just signed an executive order late last week that basically gives the green light to this drone industry, and particularly drone deliveries will take off as a result. They've got to write the rule, so it's going to take some months. But by the early next year, I know all the drone companies are ready. They said their technology is ready. It's quiet, it's safe, and it's efficient. And Walmart, just announced just last week that they're going to expand their drone deliveries. I think you're going to start seeing it a lot more. Right now, you could go to Texas and get drone deliveries in many places around Dallas from Walmart and a few other places. But, it's going to be routine in our yards.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the quiet factor. I think that one thing that's really important, because I think it would be really annoying if you were hearing that buzz whirring sound every time one of your neighbors is getting a package dropped off, right?
Well, you know what? It's not as quiet as you will hear that. It's sort of a whirring, but it's here and gone. It's 20 seconds, and then
it's not like a train going by, right?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I look out my window right now and I see a lot of trees, and I'm thinking, okay, where would a drone drop a package for me? That's an issue that has to be worked out.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's all GPS, right? They know exactly where to go. They can pinpoint the spot that they can safely drop out of the sky, and it's terrifying. But I think it's one of those things you can't put back in the bottle either. It's coming.
Well, for people who live in apartments and tall buildings, condos, that kind of thing, you're going to have like a bin, a receptacle. It should be locked. I've seen various prototypes of this stuff, but they can drop the package in through the top, and there might be 8 different lockers on that box. And so you would get home from work and you'd go and unlock your box and find your package in there, but someone else's box would have it somewhere else, in one of the other lockers. So there's a lot of technology involved here. Some of it's not quite there yet, but it's coming, and the drone part is solved.
Have you ever tried to operate a drone yourself?
No. No, I haven't. I know friends have them, play around with them with photos and stuff, but I have not.
Yeah, no. MDOT has some very talented photographers that have been very successful at using them to shoot photos, aerials that we otherwise would really struggle to get. So
now they're using sticks, right, to control it?
Yeah.
Well, the idea here is it's all going to be autonomous. And so the drone will take off because a computer tells it to. and it will have the route uploaded, and it will fly to its destination. It will drop it. It'll come back to the charging pad and wait for the next order.
Yeah. That's
some
really,
guy, 1,000 miles away will be monitoring it.
Yeah. And it's a whole different kind of logistics operation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what the new executive order is going to allow,
that
kind of stuff to happen. So we'll see. It's not here yet, but by next year, I think it's really going to be, the floodwaters.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting time to be on the beat. What do you see coming? What will you be writing about next week?
Still trying to figure that out, but I'm looking a lot at autonomous vehicles. Tesla is very close to launching its robo-taxi service, which might be 10 cars in Austin, Texas. There are a lot of questions about the safety of Tesla's technology right now. Elon Musk will tell you it's all great, but the NHTSA, the government safety organization in DC, still has a lot of questions, and they are investigating it's called full self-driving technology for safety problems with a person who's still in the vehicle and
a safety driver, as they say.
Yeah, well, these will be your personal Tesla, and they've had some fatal crashes where people were where the technology didn't detect certain things, and if it can't do well with a person in the car, how's it going to do with nobody in the car?
Well, I always questioned whether it was smart from a branding standpoint to call that autopilot. I think that sent a bad message right from the start.
Yeah, and it got worse when their upper level systems called full self-driving. Then they started calling it FSD, so they could get away from that. But in Europe, they won't allow them to call it full self-driving. Like, where is American regulation on that? We haven't done anything about that either.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of experts will tell you that they prefer the term automated to autonomous, because automated means it has automated features, but we're not saying yet that this thing is completely autonomous.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
So, but it sounds like what you're saying is Google Waymo jumped way ahead on that front.
Waymo is way ahead. In fact, I saw some data today. They're very popular in San Francisco, LA, and Phoenix right now. And a company just did some data comparison on those 3 rideshare services, and they found that Waymo's way more expensive, but people love it. And you have to wait longer for a Waymo. And yet everybody doesn't mind. They're still willing to ride it. And they have become a very legitimate player in San Francisco in particular.
That's funny. I don't know if you realize what you did there is say Waymo stands for, you didn't say this, but it sounds like Waymo stands for way more expensive.
But if you haven't ridden in one yet, I strongly encourage you to do it. It's coming. It's in, as I said, San Francisco, Phoenix, and LA. Now in Austin, they're adding it in the Uber network in certain cities. I think in Atlanta, maybe it's coming to Miami, Washington D.C. A lot of major cities are going to have Waymo pretty soon, if they don't already. And the first chance you get to ride in one, you really should, because it is a remarkable experience, and it will get you over your fear of self-driving cars. Yeah,
no, I'm more than willing. I know I rode in some May Mobility vehicles in the Grand Rapids and Detroit as they rolled those out. And it's fascinating technology.
Sure is.
Well, thanks, Joann. As always, I appreciate you being willing to check in and break down some of the things you're working on. It's all fascinating, and I think it's just a really interesting time to be writing about transportation.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jeff. Good to talk to you.
I'd like to thank you once more for tuning in to Talking Michigan Transportation. You can find show notes and more on Apple Podcasts or Buzzsprout. I also want to acknowledge the talented people who help make this a reality each week, starting with Randy Debler, who skillfully edits the audio, Jesse Ball, who proofs the content, Courtney Bates, who posts the podcast to various platforms, and Jackie Salinas, who transcribes the audio to make it accessible to all.